Crypto products are unregulated and could be highly volatile. Please be aware of the risks before investing.
राज, बाबूजी के आशीर्वाद से हमने अपनी नई शुरुआत तो कर ली, पर अपना फ्यूचर प्लान कैसे करें?
बड़े बड़े शहरों में ऐसी छोटी छोटी बातें होती रहती हैं।
Looking for perfect start? Get a Bitcoin today. Download the Unocoin app.
जब मैं तेरी उम्र का था ना, तो एक सक्सेसफुल करियर, लॉन्ग टर्म प्लानिंग सब रेडी करके रख चुका था। और एक इन महाराज को देखो, पूरा दिन फोन में लगा रहेगा।
दैट प्लानिंग तो मैंने भी कर रखी है Unocoin के साथ।
नए जमाने के साथ नई चीजें आजमाएं। Looking for Bitcoin? Download the Unocoin app.
Guys, we really need to work hard. This wasn't a good quarter. Tell me, are you happy with this?
Unocoin.
Want to earn Bitcoin? Just grab your phone and shake it. Download the Unocoin app.
Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin,
Bitcoin.
Get a systematic buying plan from the Unocoin app to get your Bitcoin today. Download the Unocoin app.
Hello everyone, once again, welcome back to Unocoin's weekly live sessions. I know we are seeing you after a little long, but today we are going to have a very interesting discussion around Nifty 50 versus Bitcoin. Which one is an interesting choice for today's consumer, and what kind of consumer at that? For which we have our, obviously I don't have to give any introduction for him, Mr. Sathvik Vishwanath, the CEO and the co-founder of Unocoin, your favorite crypto exchange. So, hi Sathvik, how are you today? Good evening.
I'm very good, Shambi. How are you doing?
I'm great. And I'm very excited for today's topic because, in the Indian financial market, something that we highly regard as an index for good assets is Nifty 50. And with Bitcoin being completely opposite in that spectrum in terms of the belief system of the current market, it's gonna be a very exciting thing to understand your perspective on this. So just to get started with, for our audience who might not know, what is Nifty 50 essentially?
I think it's a index, simply put. Some call it as index fund as well, from NSE, which is the National Stock Exchange market. So to track the movement of various industries, equity, the good players and such, which kind of represents as an index for the entire stock market. So there is some weightage given to the different set of 50 companies, and that is a dynamic weightage. So they change it over a period of time. I mean, for every interval, and it just simply put, it talks about whether the market is moving up or down, right? So by looking at it, you kind of get an idea of what the way it's moving.
Yeah, and a lot of people think of it as a good source to make diversified investments. Now, while it has been steady, how much do you like to comment on? Would you like to comment on the stability or the reliability of the Nifty 50s?
See, I would say that's extremely reliable because it is set up and monitored by a set of experts, right? So to tell about like how exactly the movement of the equity market is happening, and it is something which gets adjusted over a period of time as well. But it is definitely, as compared to the to something like Bitcoin, which is like absolutely open market.
Yep.
So
And
in that way, it's I mean, you cannot really compare. The reliability is extremely high. If I am bothered about investing randomly or with some intelligence and research in equity market as compared to investing in Nifty 50 fund itself, I would obviously go for Nifty 50.
okay, now coming in with the Bitcoiner perspective on this, because we all know that once you get into the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you start understanding the sound money reality. We know that it's still in the store of value phase of it, but just a quick analysis or quick overview on how do you think of these two assets when put parallelly together?
See, it is for a, I mean, both are there for a different purpose altogether, right? So, if you are looking at the way corporate grows, the way the country grows, or the economic policies, and the strength of a specific country, GDP of it, etc., you'll be more inclined towards the Nifty 50. But if you are more looking at decentralized innovation or global policies, how it is shaping up, and to some extent inflation related as well, or the Fed related rates, or if it comes to the war between two nations. So in those instances, we will actually start looking at the Bitcoin as a hedge, right? So it's completely two different things, I would say. But for one who want to have a good diversified portfolio, there is room for both. So they will have to choose what percentage of it is more risky asset that is allowed, and on the other side, what percentage of it they want it comparatively a stabilized asset. So in that way, I think an intelligent investor would choose both. A risky one would choose more of the Bitcoin or crypto side. On the other side, the one who is bothered about the regulations and trying to make sure it's everything whatever is happening is within the ambit and control of a specific nation itself, and just making sure it's like it's all SEBI regulated. Like there is a regulator called SEBI itself, right? So then he would choose the Nifty 50 as the majority of fund. But if you see the wealth managers from developed countries like United States and such, nowadays they definitely are recommending a part of the portfolio to have it as the Bitcoin and crypto. So, and now that we also have ETF being traded for Bitcoin, so you can actually involve the risk and return of the Bitcoin as well, similar to any other stock itself in US. And we hope there will be more and more countries which will approve such kind of instruments at the stock market level itself and have it include over a period of time, I think. So yeah, it's so both are available to everyone in one or the other way. Yeah.
So very interestingly, Satvik, something that a lot of Indians, I think investment nowadays, I would like to think of it as a good thing that it has become a trend nowadays. Most people now joining the workforce are considering investing in mutual funds, considering investing in index funds like Nifty 50, and whatever is available on the market, doing a good amount of research there. But something that every time I believe people forget to factor in is the rate of inflation and the money expansion that goes around. And if we look at the CAGR over the past few years of Nifty 50, it was around 16 to 19%, whereas for Bitcoin it's been more than 60%. So how do you because how do you just I am very convinced with the whole Bitcoin story, of course, but for the users who are trying to understand the difference over here, uh, how do you think of it when you look at the CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate of both the assets?
So instead of CAGR, I would suggest looking at something called Sharpe ratio. Okay, so it's about the risk-adjusted return. So we measure what is the kind of risk that exists, and then we compare it with return, right? So if there is more risk, how much more, and if it is more return, how much more. So it's possible that the risk you're multiplying with 5, but the return you may just be multiplying with 3, but still, because that risk actually did not push you into the bad side of it, the 3x return looks super lucrative. So this is what has been happening when it comes to crypto. Okay, so it is definitely not out of the risky zone yet. Um, so the return is kind of surpassing the risk, uh, and it's also the initial days, right? So for example, if it is a new company or a new startup, right? So the rate at which the valuation grows. So probably if you see first 2 3 years, you may even see the valuation growing by about 30 40% a year easily, and maybe sometimes even 100% a year easily. But can you do that after 10 years? Can you do that for a normal MNC company? It's not. So if you just measure the percentage, you will get the wrong intuition of how the entire picture would look like. When you're starting from zero or extremely low value, the percentage growth, yes, it will be a huge multiple, but for a grown value to continue growing, that multiplier does not exist. Okay, so even if the even if you just compare, for example, between 2021 to 25, right? So, and if you see the all-time high price of Bitcoin, which was around $69,000, and we were able to achieve about 107 a few weeks ago, 107K in dollars. So, but if you compare the percentage growth per year for these maybe about 4 years, it's not even equivalent to, it's less than the one from equity markets, right? So, if you grow it at around 10 12% for 5 years, you will kind of, the 67 will end up with about 100 whatever it is, right? So it's actually less. Okay, and why this has happened right like this particular time is again because of lot of factors which was not really factored in before. So that same kind of growth was not visible. On the other side, if you see the previous peak cycles, so we have seen in 2017 the highest was about if I remember it right, it was about $20,000. It almost hit 5,000, and then it became like 69. So there we saw about 3.5 times. But now we have not. We have only seen like 1.5 times. 1.5 times in 4 years is like nothing. It's not even like 15%. Okay. So and now it is coming down to a stage where, okay, if it is kind of similar to the equity markets, on the other side the risk is extremely high, then where do the investors get inclined to? So either they will have to strongly believe in the future prospect of crypto, not just about whatever has happened in the last few years, to get into it, or else they will have to lean towards um, the completely regulated market, where the returns are more in terms of the economy boost of the country itself, the monetary policies, the corporate success and achievements, and to some extent, the export related activities, as well, either through service or products or whatever, right? So, and to some also GDP. So these things combined will kind of determine the prices of the indexation for the stocks, right? So the stocks and indexation of stock is just similar. So there is more reason for someone in India to get inclined towards the equity markets, if he is only bothered about the investment and not about the vision of what is promising what. But if you feel like, okay, this is like a decentralized thing and it works in a different way, and it is like a hedge against inflation and a lot of other things, and it is like limited in supply, so those things will kind of convince, yes, to some extent. But does he part away the same amount of money that he would part when it comes to equity market? I don't think so, for a very normal Indian. So there definitely are someone who is like super bullish on crypto, but that is a comparatively a small market, I think. And um depending upon when they got into crypto, and most of them, like 90% of the people that are in crypto are have got into crypto since 2021. So they have not seen, like, if you only see the Bitcoin, so they definitely have not seen like the returns of even 1x, 2x, 3x, even in the entire 4 years, you know, timeline. So it'll just come down to that kind of, risk assessment and the belief in the vision, right? So in other simple words, I can also talk about, okay, you have like 10 lakh rupees that you want to invest. Whether do you want to invest into a new startup that just have been created, I mean, someone created the founders about 2 years ago and they're doing good. But on the other side, you can invest in mutual funds, right? So when you strongly believe in the vision of the founders and the idea that whatever they're trying to do, yes, still investing in that does make sense, as compared to mutual funds. But for the ones who don't want to take that kind of risky route, they will just go with something like mutual funds, or maybe some kind of equity markets, and take it there. I think that's how I'd
Okay.
see.
So Satvik, just to get an understanding, because you have met and conversed with more normie investors than I think most people in the industry, just to get a general idea, what do you see as the major pain points or the major I would say risk factors that a general normal first time investor considers when coming into Bitcoin?
I would say the fear of unknown, that will be the biggest one, right? Um, and in India, for someone to understand how is Bitcoin different um, from maybe some kind of wallet app or maybe some kind of Paytm money transfer, it's actually tough, right? So you can simply send 100 rupees in UPI, instantly it's received. And when you send in Bitcoin, the first question they ask is why it's not instant, right? So what is happening behind the scenes? Why is a common man bothered about it? Right. So the vision of like what happens behind the scenes and why it works in a specific way, itself is the makes people think like, does a country like India needs it? Do we need it? Don't we have a better system already? So then comes the regulatory challenges that exist in the country. To some extent, the confusions that are still there, and also the higher taxation, where the government continues to compare the Bitcoin and crypto industry to something like the gambling or betting. So that actually makes case. And on the other side, we obviously need some kind of institutions betting on this. for people to feel a little bit more confident of the entire industry, and that is not really happening yet. And even if somewhere it's happening, they are trying to make sure it's kind of limited in nature, and a lot of times it is not disclosed to public, right? So when that happens, we don't know, we don't hear about any big celebrities or big multinational companies or big investment firms or hedge funds or anyone like that believing in this, right? We do hear about MicroStrategy and other, but there are a lot of foreign companies for us, and the rules and regulations are way different there than as compared to here. Can we do the same thing here? Not really, right? So it has its own. It come with its own. So its own kind of challenges, I think. So because of which the trust that a common man would put into this, without, I mean, I'm only talking about someone who cannot fully understand Bitcoin, or who only can know a little bit about Bitcoin, and is not capable of understanding the technology behind it, even if someone explains it, right? But these actually kind of scares them away, and then it also, you will start looking at the, okay, what is the risk and what is the return. That's obviously, it comes down to that, and not all time. I mean, not during all intervals of time. Um, it has given consistent returns. There are times where the value gets wiped off like 30-40% in a matter of 1 year as well, right? So it's kind of given some mild heart attacks to some people already, like the way it's going up and down, and a lot of times we will continue breaking our head about why Bitcoin price went up and why Bitcoin price went down. We will not even know why, right? So, but on the other side, there is so much of analysis available when it comes to Nifty 50, and like why it's going up and then it has its own MNCs behind it, and then they have their own analysis of why the stock price went up and down. But when it comes to the Bitcoin, it's too tough to say, and because it is kind of have exposure globally, anything happening in some remote part of the world will already have some kind of effect on Bitcoin. I would say the effect, the intensity of that effect has come down, definitely come down as compared to 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 8 years ago. But it is there. It's definitely not like zero. So yeah, these things will kind of block the minds of people about to what extent they want to take the risk on this kind of new industry. And some of them only dedicate a very small percentage of portfolio, which generally is a healthy thing. Especially, like we always say in crypto, only invest what you're prepared to lose, and don't invest more. And then there are extreme enthusiasts which will go a little bit overboard and invest a little bit more than that. But yes, they have to be like a comparatively, very high risk takers, I would say. So having the leap of faith into a completely new asset class is a challenge. Um, so probably in about another 5 years, 10 years, it will comparatively be more normal for someone to have some part of money part in the different digital and crypto assets. But we don't see that for a absolutely normal common man yet. So where they're significantly investing into this, it'll continue to be a challenge. Yeah.
I think the challenge is more about the lack of intellectual curiosity, the challenge of lack of the idea of getting information, lack of, and also to some extent the conditioning of forbiddance that we have grown up with, starting with our education system. So we are conditioned in a way to be very obedient, and something that government doesn't openly approve of is something, we're always in any way, hesitant to participate in. But one more thing that at least I have learned in whatever 3-5 years I have been studying, reading about Bitcoin, and getting into the space, basically working into the space. I mean, invest only what you can afford to lose, is it's actually quite the opposite. At least as per my understanding, and everybody, it's my opinion. You need not take it as a financial advice or something, but I think of it in a very different way now, because I know, don't invest what you are ready to lose. I mean, if you're ready to lose the value year on year to inflation, don't invest that amount. If you want to save it, then you have to put it in Bitcoin. There's no other hedge against that. So I think to come to that point, it takes a certain level of putting your heart, mind, and soul into this. And a lot of times people keep saying that you have to invest some time into understanding the Bitcoin ecosystem because there's nobody teaching about it. Like, even if there are people, there are, YouTubers, there are spaces like these that are happening. People need to come on board and understand and listen and have questions about this. Most of the time, people are not interested in knowing what the problem is. And I have seen this, I've just been doing a slight amount of observation for something that I've been working towards. I have seen a gradual decrease in the lifestyle and the purchasing power of certain classes that exist in today's world, mostly the tier 2 cities and tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And those people still don't know why is it happening, how is it happening. They want to own expensive, depreciating assets. So their money is going into that, whatever they're making. But at the same time, the basis of lifestyle growth, because of course the value of money, the schools that maybe the parents have studied in, the kids are studying, maybe if not in the same quality of school, a little lesser quality of an education system, because they can't afford it. The blame is that the education has become more and more expensive, but the thing is that the affordability has reduced. I mean, it's been growing at the same pace. The affordability with the value has gone down. So with all of this happening, I think it should trigger and it should tinkle people, somewhere into asking questions. So that still isn't happening. What do you think, Sathvik, could be the reason for that?
I think we never learn about um, how to question. I think, right?
Exactly, the conditioning of obedience.
So um, we learn the topics that we can question, and we also learn the topics which we should not question and just take it for granted. So it will just come down to that, I guess. Um, we usually don't question much about money, right? And we just don't question much about bureaucracy or the politics or the way the chain of command and such things work. We just leave it for people who take care of it for their own benefit or for their service, whatever they're trying to do for people. And we more learn about the bottom part of the pyramid, or maybe to couple of levels up, because that is where we foresee to go over a period of time. So we do not learn about how to go to the top of all up to top of the pyramid, I would say. So when there are questions, sometimes when we learn about an answer, then we realize what the question should have been. Right? So a lot of that is actually true. People didn't know the rupees or these kinds of like currencies are called fiat money.
Yeah.
Till we have crypto and Bitcoin,
I
right?
agree.
And we did not we understood that, okay, the price of a pen, it increases over a period of time. We just take it for granted. So all that means is we should earn more and more money as we grow older. But why it is happening, we just take it for granted.
Yeah.
I like that, right? How much
So
money gets into the system, we will not question. We believe the government will do their work. So it will just come down to asking the right questions. And when you have the right questions, you don't know whom to ask.
yeah, that is very interesting, because I remember back in class 11th and 12th, being a commerce kid, we were taught about depreciating asset. Nobody mentioned that Indian rupees is also a depreciating asset. The US dollar is also a depreciating asset. Nobody told us about that. Now that you look at it, it seems almost like a deception the way it has been put together. And I know a lot of professors, teachers who are teaching about it also do not realize this. With all the expertise in that particular subject, they still do not realize it. I know people who are great experts at economics, who hold PhD in economics in India, but They were not aware that the Indian rupees is not actually pegged to gold; it's pegged to the federal, the reserve that we have, and it contains all sorts of things, including bonds and all that. So it's not purely backed by gold. This also is a very interesting discovery for most people that I talk to. The reason is that I think the mainstream media is definitely not talking about it as much as they should. Normal people are also not asking questions as much as they should. But then eventually, the way us Indians we are progressing. I mean, I could easily say that my grandfather used to be the only bread earner of the family, and he took care of almost six kids in his house with a wife. And now look at us, bachelors doing a job in a city like say Gurgaon, Bangalore. They often have to ask parents for some additional funds to survive in that city. So that's a big question, because that guy back in maybe 50 years ago, they used to create their own home. Now making a home is a milestone. It's a career milestone, that if you're able to create your own home, it's a major milestone. Back then it was a basic thing, like okay, at some point you're gonna do it and it's gonna happen. So ownership of land and all those things, they've become so challenging with the growing years, and nobody is realizing that. And I'm very astounded at the fact that people are not curious to know that. And I think the few people who ever got curious got into Bitcoin anyways, sooner or later. But yeah, I think I suppose that there's supposed to be more people asking these questions out there, questioning the system, questioning at least the way things are going, because the pen remains the same. Pen is getting expensive, agreed. Same pen used to be like 2 rupees. I remember when maybe I was in class fourth or fifth. Now that same pen is costing me 5 rupees, 6 rupees. Pen is the same. The quality of the ink remains the same. The body remains the same. The job it's doing remains the same. But then why the price increase? So that should be, yeah.
So I was just reading today that if you take a typical Indian home, so for example, let's say a 2 BHK in a decent flat, for an example. So whatever is the required household income that you needed to pay about 20% of it as a down payment and then continue paying EMIs. So let's say the household income, whatever it is, about 30-40% of it goes towards the EMI. Okay. And if you want to do the exact same thing now in 2025, you are supposed to have 79% more income. So if you're earning 100 rupees in 2020 and it lets you have a specific home through down payment and EMI, and if you want to do the exact same today, then you should at least be earning 179. If not, then you cannot get that home. So now, does the earnings, could be in salaries, in business and whatever, has it gone up by 79% in 5 years? Not really. So which essentially comes down to, in spite you are getting your hike, in spite business are getting a little bit better profit every single year, the standard of living is actually decreasing unless you're getting a hike of 20%.
Yeah, which I think not most people are getting in corporate.
90% don't,
Yeah.
or maybe 70% don't, and remaining 30 are getting it because they switch the job.
Yeah, 20-25% looks really good in the same company. Otherwise, I mean, if you're switching your job, that's when you get like 50%, 70% hike. Also, you can't keep switching jobs every year,
Yeah.
because that's gonna look bad on your resume. So you're stuck from all the directions.
Yeah, I mean, like the after you, if you do it 2 or 3 times, then the fourth employer will have their own doubts about your reliability and long term prospect in the company. So and even if you do, again, like Bitcoin, right? So where initial years, yes, you saw 50% increase over a period of time every year, or maybe like 8 out of 10 years or 6 out of 8 years, whatever. but after it goes to some level, you cannot see that kind of rise, right? So it's actually takes a way lot of money to do it. So even if you could have done it in the initial few years of the career, but after 10 years as well, if you're still switching every single year, there is more chances that you will end up picking up a job for same salary or less salary also. So it will not work, right? So initially it will, but it will not for long. So with this kind of inflation happening around us, and the quality of life getting lower and lower on one side, and on the other side, people are more ambitious about leading a little bit better lifestyle as compared to what it was before, because of all the exposure to internet and social media that already exists. So people already feel deprived of the things that is around them, which they actually did not know before. So, and these lot of social media makes purchasing of things so easy. Okay, like when you are seeing it, you click on it and you buy it, kind of things, right? So it's like it is that really simple. So with these things in place, a lot of people will get into this spiral debt. Uh,
What is happening?
so,
That's what NBFCs are functioning upon essentially.
so and uh, the lot of credit card companies, whatever you would think of, they are not making more money when you just buy stuff from the merchant, but they make more money when you actually start paying interest for it, when you cannot pay it in full and such.
Yeah.
And they make it extremely easy for you to take debt, and they obviously do the required background checks so that you're not running away and such. So people get into that kind of the loop, and a lot of people obviously do not have the required financial discipline of like, okay, this goes for investment, this goes for me, this goes for education, this goes for health and reserves and household. So when that particular bifurcation is not properly made, and even if they make it, they don't stick to it. They just start excusing themselves of little deviation, and end up with a lot more deviation and get into this kind of spiral thing, right? So if you start blaming, where do you start blaming? For the system itself is like this, right? So um, everyone want everything that keeps them happy, but it is just like not available at the prices that it used to be at one point of time. You just have more options to choose, but you have less money, or I would not say less money, you will actually have more money, but the value of that money is less as time goes forward. And then it'll come down to backing with any kind of maybe some kind of savings they hold, or some kind of assets they have, and such. And that and to some extent, I also see a lot of um, the parents now who let's say the one in the first decade of their working class, I mean, of them being working, right? So they are actually not so serious of creating some wealth so that they leave it as a legacy to children. They are more bothered about, okay, it's my responsibility to give the good lifestyle and good education for my kid, and what the kid does and how the kid figures out their life, it is just on them. I don't want to save every penny for the entire life to make some asset for the kid, so that, like, I mean, that is not the mentality of people already. And this has been true when it comes to developed countries since almost forever, which means we are shifting towards that kind of that kind of mindset already. So but overall it still comes down to the inflation that people don't really see seriously, and on the other side, the issue with a lot of taxes that we are already paying, that people don't see seriously, just like you cannot do anything about it anyway, kind of thing. But and then the debt spiral that they get into, they don't see it seriously in the initial days, and there'll be one day where they'll end up taking more loan and try to clear off the higher interest debt, which is credit card debt and such, and push this around, and or maybe take money from their parents or someone who actually has some savings to pull them out of this. So this hasn't really been a good way, I think, for people to get into if they are getting into this kind of thing. So they should really watch what they're trying to do. There are obviously factors, external factors influencing one's financial freedom. You need to have a really strong um, motive and drive to stick to a plan to fight the inflation and taxation and all like various ups and downs that is going on in your life, and including maybe many emergencies and stuff. So you need to have that plan, else it's not working.
Yeah, and it's very important to consider all of these things. I see 90% of the people not even considering these things as a problem, because I see people trying to save on taxes a lot. People will also avoid paying taxes, doing some tigadam or the other. They'll have the CAs in touch, which is fine, because of course there are loopholes in the system. The CAs help them out with that, and people escape paying taxes, and in the legitimate way, most legitimate way there are. But government is also smarter than that. Why you may escape from there? How do you escape inflation if you are? Because now that I think of it, Satvik, the only way to hedge against inflation is to invest. And when I say invest, I mean it in a very generic sense. It could be in stocks, it could be in bonds, it could be in anything. But for all those, it could be even property. All of these things, you also have to pay capital gains. So where does one commoner go, And it gets trickier as you go down the spiral, because capital gains you have to pay taxes, income you have to pay taxes, everything you have to pay taxes. With that, inflation is also happening, which is a sort of hidden tax. So, what is at the end of the day, what is in your pocket? It's just pieces of paper that will be toned down and will have no value to it. Because I mean, yeah, if I accidentally end up, maybe say not losing, but damaging one of my 500 rupee notes, it loses its value immediately. Nobody's gonna accept that 500 rupees ka note. So it's a bigger question and bigger challenge.
See, that is the country you live in, right? So every country comes with its own pros and cons. Okay. So in if you are living in India, yes, you have to obey the law of the land and regulations and rules and policies that already exist. And on the other side, at least India is not forcing you to stay in India forever. If you want to have a different kind of lifestyle that is more favorable to you on a different land, you figure it out and you leave, right? A lot of
Yeah,
people do it already.
but then that kind of brings up two more questions. One, that the country's development in general, the people who are going to understand this will eventually consider leaving the country in general. Most people, I think. Anyways, we see most people in crypto ecosystem are flying overseas to be to Dubai, to countries that are more open to new income classes like these, versus India. Another thing that is something to be considered is that what does that mean for the Indian economy in the coming years and for the people who remain behind? So what's going to happen? Are we going to have an Argentina like situation in say 15, 20 years? Will there be, I mean, I know it's an exaggerated thing to say, and it's just an anticipation that I keep pondering upon, but would there be a financial emergency in the country in the next 20 years? I mean, very plausible.
No,
The
I
way
actually don't think we will actually go in that particular direction, right? So if you see the number of people leaving the country as well, yes, that number comes to few tens of lakhs a year. But on the other side, you continue to have so much of population, so much of young generation, and uh, And on the other side, you don't really need to leave the country to make money in the currencies which are superior to Indian rupee, right? So the present technology and infrastructure already gives you that kind of options. So how you handle it is all up to you. Again, once you start making a lot of money, then you have to bother about tax planning.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I mean. It's a whole circle. It's a vicious circle which turns into a spiral, and you don't know. You just keep sliding into it. And every time I have this discussion with somebody who's just normally into the stuff, maybe like an enthusiast of economy, just likes to read things, just likes to read news on finance and stuff. It goes into a spiral. The whole discussion goes into a spiral because okay, then they start contemplating. Oh, so we make this much, we pay this much taxes, this is how we try to kind of get some deductions out of it, and then the inflation part of it becomes very challenging. And in a country like India, I mean, while I'm very bullish on India, while I've always been very bullish on India for the opportunities, for everything that it has to offer, it is becoming a growing challenge for people to even see growth in terms of opportunity, not just in terms of what money they're making or what taxes or what inflation is happening, even in terms of opportunities. So that keeps on reducing. People blame it on population, but I don't see population being the real cause. Of course, to some extent, a contributor, but yeah, I mean, it just keeps going down that hole. So
That I mean, that is kind of I would say partially true. But on the other side, India is comparatively a very peaceful country. Right? So we don't have, if you see, some, I mean, few countries which have political issues and such things, which is everyday's issue kind of thing. We don't usually face that kind of thing. Um, and when it comes to the security for the people, right? So it's comparatively uh, better than many countries. And if I actually ask you, can you name like 30 countries? I think you will probably stop at around 15 or 20 or 25. But there are like 200 plus. Right? So we actually don't even know the issues or don't even know the names of those kinds of countries. I mean, not out of, I mean, you will not be able to remember because you may not even know about them. So we actually comparatively live in a developing country which always look forward to be a developed country in the future. It has been in the developed country since when I was studying as well and when my parents were studying as well. So what does it take to really catch up with the developed countries when the developed countries are also progressing at their own pace, right? So it just comes down to that. And yes, the economy should improve, and on the other side, the people have to have better skill set, better living, and all of it, right? So you cannot exactly run a country like India like a machine, right? So if you see I mean, if you see a country like China, for example, there are sets of people who exactly do one specific thing for all their life, right? They will not have higher aspirations. I mean, a lot of them. I'm not talking everyone, not at least. And they exactly know what to do, and they just do that. And over a period of time, if you see, it is comparatively easier to control if everyone is, or the most of them are behaving the way they are expected to behave from the government point of view. So we can design a progress in the economy comparatively easily. But like you say, when it comes to India, yes, we have a lot of freedom as compared to them. And including, okay, if you need to leave the country, you can work somewhere else. And generally, you find, Indians in a lot of countries, right? So who have come there maybe one or two or three generations before and have tried to figure out their own life, etc. So on the other side, yes, the government needs a lot of fund to maintain their own, welfare of their own parties, political parties, and making sure the messages what they want to give is all reaching to the public. And then you need the infrastructure, and then you need the military, and the huge, like a lot of budget, whatever it kind of allocates to. And we have to really complain about, okay, why am I paying so much of taxes, why am I having this kind of inflation, when the total budget is way lower than the amount they're collecting, which is not true. Which means if they already need this kind of money for whatever they do in the way they do it, you are actually not, they're not trying to take money from you and save it for themselves. They're
Yeah,
using it for
of
the country.
course.
So, but on the other side, where we actually see an issue is different states contributing different taxation and GST and like everything, right? So there are some states which comparatively are backward as compared to a lot of South Indian states which are comparatively forward. So big part of the money that we earn here and pay as taxes goes for the welfare of them. So we just have to again treat like India as a home. Not everyone is really earning good, but there is a requirement to keep everyone happy to some extent. So I think that's the only logical explanation I can give myself whenever I think of the same question that you were trying to explain. What am I left with at the end? So you have to think like the entire India is your family to even have some kind of answer to yourself. Else, what you give is definitely way more than what you get back today.
Well, yeah, I mean, sure, the whole country is a family. Vasudeva Kutumbakam is, the literally the saying that we live by in this nation. But yeah, there are certain interesting aspects which I won't bring up right now. Might not be very appropriate for the Bitcoin discussion that we are doing, because it's a it's a lot of aspects inclusive in that. So Rahul over here is saying something very interesting. Inflation is God grace to test ourselves. So, so indeed, inflation is also a test of intellect, and I would say intellectual curiosity one might have. And I think with the growing years, you're gonna see more and more of this, and more people flocking down to assets like Bitcoin that are fundamentally strong, rather than fundamentally weaker assets. While investing is hedging against inflation, it's also important to understand how to escape inflation. You shouldn't, and can't escape taxes. You should pay the taxes, but inflation is something that we can all attempt to at least escape, looking at more fundamentally strong asset classes like gold. I would also consider gold as a fundamentally strong asset class when it comes down to that. So Satvik, any closing remarks before we end today's session?
I mean, see, at the end, you cannot always compare the return from various other asset classes to the returns from Bitcoin and crypto, right? So it is definitely totally agreed that the crypto comes with its own sets of risk, usually the higher risk, way higher risks than the other asset classes. But it's an opportunity to expose oneself to something which is promising something new, which was never promised, or
Before.
which
True.
was never explored before, if not a promise, but at least explored before, right? So it has its own way of fighting inflation. It has its own way of making the world smaller, and when it comes to the payments, or and it also a new asset class where people now believe something digital to be an asset when it was not even like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So all of that put together, I think we are with a kind of very interesting time when you actually see the way Bitcoin and crypto industry is growing. Uh, we have not seen such a kind of successful parallel ecosystem even in the last 300 years. Something comes up, they pop in few years and be done. It will never achieve a scale which can make it sustain. I think the crypto and Bitcoin industry is slowly going towards that that particular scale, um, where it'll figure out, and it'll have its own way of sustaining to be present for a very long term in the future. And that particular population continues to grow, right? So this gives like an opportunity for everyone who is into this now to have an extremely small percentage of portfolio as an exposure to this, because it's like giving it a chance kind of thing. And yes,
So
for
not
the risk you're taking, there is a return, right? So the I mean, like a lot of times the numbers also will kind of scare me. Sometimes it will not impress me. um, all of that I have seen, but okay, let's see, kind of thing is there, right? So I think that definitely exists among um, the people who knows crypto comparatively deeper, as compared to someone who say that, okay, now I'm investing and my return is like 2x of this, and I'll try to get out of this hopefully maybe in 6 months or money. So those are just not making like a little bit of money. I mean, of course they are required because the ecosystem exists, for some part of ecosystem exists because of them as well. The valuation exists because of them as well, and because the value is increasing, there are more people coming into it, more people learning into it. So there is way less people who bother about robotics today. There's way less people who bother about artificial intelligence today. So those are the even equally disruptive technologies, but one cannot like make simple one or two button press to invest something and make money out of it, right? So, but in crypto you can. Even if you have 100 rupees, you can invest. Even if you have 1 crore, you can invest. So, and it is very liquid market where if you want to exit, at least at some price, you will be able to exit. You will be able to find the buyers and sellers. So yeah, all of that combined, it will give rise to some part in the portfolio for people in India as well, including like when the wealth managers start recommending it and such. So just watch out whatever is happening in US. It'll kind of repeats with a few years of lag here, I think.
true.
So yeah, we are the one who are taking the risk and bet and making sure that the industry exists for people who want to take that deep dive.
Yeah, 100%. And I think very strong going, and looking ahead at more and more people flocking down to it as we continue with this bull cycle. So on this note, we'll be ending our today's session, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, Satvik, for your time today, for sharing your insights with all of us. We'll see you again soon. Stay tuned, guys. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media channels to get an update whenever we go live next. Have a great weekend. Acha, abhi to mid-week hai. Have a great week ahead.
Keep ahead.
And keep stacking stats. Stay humble. Bye bye. Good night.
Thank you.